Well, good morning. Last night was one of the most quiet night, or one of the more quiet nights, I'll say it that way, that we've had in a long time because we are boondocking right outside. What is it again? Something Bear? Sleeping Bear Dunes. But boondocking is always going to be a trade-off. You get the land, you get the quiet, but you also get, depending on where you are, you get the bugs, and you don't get to run the, in our case, we don't get to run the AC, so it's hot and humid, but it cooled off pretty quickly last night, actually. So we had a pretty good night's sleep. I got eaten alive. Penny got eaten alive because the grasses are so tall here and there's bugs everywhere. But that's part of the trade-off. Okay, Sleeping Bear Dunes. We're doing the Pierce Stocking Scenic Drive. It's a series of 12 stops along this loop, and the first one is right there, the covered bridge.
It's pretty cool looking. So we're only here in the Sleeping Bear Dunes area for one full day, so we wanted to do this drive and then maybe something else this afternoon so we get the full experience of the area, which really you'd need a lot more time for that. But we came out nice and early. It's still a little drizzly, but we're hoping to avoid the crowds. And we'll show you all the stops along the way.
That's right. This is number one.
Yes, it is. Okay, let's keep going. This is stop number 2 on the Pierce Stocking Scenic Drive. We have Glen Lake. Little Glen Lake here, and Big Glen Lake out there. Little Glen Lake's only 12 feet deep, but Big Glen Lake gets out to 130. And that's Alligator Hill. Stop number 3 is the Dunes Overlook. Sleeping Bear Dunes, you gotta see the dunes. It's a 4 square mile area of dunes, they said. Let's go see. Expected them to be more sandy and not as much green with the dunes. So there's the Glen Lakes again. And that's Lake Michigan over there. And we got dunes in between. So this is stop number 4, which is the Cottonwood Trail. It's a 1.5 mile trail where you can go and hike amongst the dunes. We might walk a little bit of it, but that's the total amount of dune hiking we'll be doing. We will not be doing the dune climb, which we might pass later today. You can see it on this map. We have climbed dunes in the past, twice actually, once in Idaho and once in Colorado at the Great Sand Dunes National Park, and that's enough dune climbing for us. We'll link to those videos. You can see us suffering another time.
Yeah, when it comes to dune climbing, been there, done that, don't want to go back again.
Probably still have the sand somewhere in there.
Yeah, most likely. That's not easy. And depending on where you're hiking, not all that fun. So we're gonna keep it fairly minimal today.
So this is stop number 5. It is just a little pull off on the side of the road. And the point of it is to talk about the dune ecology. I was actually really surprised when we got here and saw all these grasses and trees and bushes growing on the dunes because it's sand. And that's what this is all about, how strong sunlight, poor soil, and constant wind can cause it to be very difficult on vegetation. So it's pretty impressive that stuff is living here. So this is stop 6. It's the last stop here in the dunes area before we get back into the forest. And they're pointing out, for instance, the beechwood tree over here and how it's just constantly being swept by sand and wind, and the whole evolution of what the dunes is like. And just like that, we are back in the forest. This is stop number 7, which they call the beech maple forest because those are the types of trees that are right here. And it's pretty incredible that you go right from sand dunes to forest in like a snap of a finger. It's just a very different environment, very pretty though. So this is stop number 8, another just quick little pull off on the side of the road. Again, talking more about the landscape here, how it was formed by glaciers, when the different trees came in versus the sand. Nice, pretty little look. I think the next 2 stops are the exciting ones, so we're gonna head to 9 and 10 now. So a few of these places where there's big parking lots, though they're not big, real big, have RV parking. This one actually has 3 spots, and they have cones there to try to prevent cars from parking there, which is kind of nice. Okay. So this is spot 9 and 10. It's the Lake Michigan Overlook and the Sleeping Bear Dunes Overlook.
Depending on what way you look.
Depending on which way you look. That's crazy steep. That is steep, dude. It'll take us 2 hours to climb back. It's a bit windy up here.
Yeah, a wee bit windy.
Beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. Hard to believe this is a lake and not the ocean. And those people are crazy. Yeah, that is so steep. I can see why there are rescue fees and why lots and lots of people get stuck every year. This is number 10, the Sleeping Bear Dune Overlook. One of these dunes used to look like a sleeping bear, hence the name. But with the change of the wind over time, it's really hard to tell which one anymore. But it's still gorgeous.
Meanwhile, sometimes it's hard to keep this gimbal still because there's so much wind. But I am using the gimbal, if you wanted to know. Some of you do, some of you don't care. But that's okay. Apparently, if it were a clear day, you could see Wisconsin 54 miles that way.
You can never see Wisconsin because of the curvature of the earth, but it is 54 miles due that way. You can see that's the South Manitou Island, I think, which is also part of the national park. This is a national park, so we got in for free with our national parks pass, our interagency pass. Otherwise, it's $25 for a vehicle, I think, for the day. Stop number 11 is North Bar Lake. It was a bay that is slowly getting closed off by the sand dunes to become a free-standing lake separated from Lake Michigan. But there still is a bit of a channel there right now. Oh, just the tiniest bit. That used to be a bay, and over like centuries, those trees are sandbar. The sand has like enclosed it. Now it just has that tiny little channel still.
And I'll be honest, stops 1 through 8 were a little underwhelming, but once we got to 9 and 10, and even this one, I think the beauty really picks up once you get to these Lake Michigan overlooks, where you get all this. I mean, this is what we're used to seeing and expecting when we do these kinds of things, these kinds of overlooks, not just trees. I'm not impressed by trees.
Steve was underwhelmed at the start of this, but now has come to appreciate Sleeping Bear Dunes. It is gorgeous. Last stop on the Pierce Stocking Scenic Drive is stop number 12, the Pine Forest. The reason it's called that? Pine Plantation, I think is what it's called, because there's a whole bunch of pine trees here. It's because when they used to do logging in the day, they would take out the natural trees, and afterwards they would plant pine trees because they were good trees. They had uniformity, they didn't have a lot of insects, problems, stuff like that. Well, now what they do, what the park rangers do, is they slowly thin out the pine trees, which are not native to right here, so that the natural forest can kind of take back the area. Interesting history.
And we are back at our campsite. That was a fun little drive. We're glad we did it. And it's a very cool, cloudy, completely overcast day. We're not getting any sun, which is why you're hearing our generator, which is right behind our Airstream right now. That is always the last resort. We hate, or at least I hate generator noise. Even if it's our own generator, I still hate that noise. But you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. So we have it running so we could charge up the batteries and I could do some video editing and things like that. But at least it's not hot and humid. I'm not sweating inside the rig like I was yesterday when there was lots of sun and very humid. So all in all, could be worse. We're going into Glen Arbor, which is a little town here in Upper Michigan later on today, but we'll show you that in the next video because this one's getting a little bit long. So with that, it's starting to sprinkle. It's starting to sprinkle. Starting to sprinkle. With that, I will bid you farewell.
That's why Penny got up. She doesn't like the sound of the rain. Hi. No, you don't like it.